Hey everyone, this is Kevin from Audiobooks All Day, and I read the complete works of Sherlock Holmes by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. Let me tell you about it. The works of Sherlock Holmes are split into 56 short stories and 4 different books, written between the years 1892 to 1927. That's a lot of Sherlock Holmes. As the title may suggest, the complete works of Sherlock Holmes is about Sherlock Holmes. And if you know anything about Sherlock Holmes, you know it's also about his trusty sidekick slash partner, Dr. Watson. Now, you may have run into Sherlock Holmes through media, through something else, either through the BBC series Sherlock, which is Benedict Cumberbatch, who I think is a fabulous actor and is amazing as Doctor Strange. You may have run into the Robert Downey Jr. interpretation of Sherlock Holmes in his various movies. You may have run into one of the Hundreds of Societies, which is all about honoring everybody's favorite detective. You may have read one of the other short stories, the thousands, I might add, of short stories by other writers trying to get in on the Sherlock Holmes universe. Needless to say, Sherlock Holmes is kind of a big deal, and that was what made me want to read the complete works. I wanted to see what it was all about. Now, if you are that person who doesn't really know anything about Sherlock Holmes, or if you just want a refresher, Sherlock Holmes is a genius, and he's a private consulting detective. He claims to be the first one ever. And what he does is he helps the police or other people who have mysteries or emergencies or anything really wrong happening. He helps them solve those mysteries and get back on track. The main tool in Sherlock Holmes's arsenal is his ability to be perceptive. He is perceptive, and many times to a fault that actually hurts the people around him because he is so perceptive and he can take out so much just looking at you and just say, hey, oh, I see this value and this value, you must be this. And it really kind of freaks a lot of people out. Dr. Watson is, as his name would suggest, a doctor. He became a doctor in the military, where he served fighting in Afghanistan for the British military. Throughout most of the series, both he and Sherlock Holmes lived at 221B Baker Street. You know, I wonder if Baker Street, you remember that song from the 80s? The one that goes, yeah, that one. That song's called Baker Street. I wonder if it has anything to do with Sherlock Holmes and him living at Baker Street. I'm not going to get that song out of my head for weeks. Anyway, almost all of the short stories and books are told from the perspective of Dr. Watson, as he's working with Sherlock Holmes and trying to understand this enigma of a man. He can't understand how somebody can be so smart in some ways and so ignorant in other ways. Dr. Watson observes that Sherlock Holmes is a genius because he's able to focus, and he's able to spend an incredible amount of time just thinking and looking through the facts, and he spends all of his time trying to understand the history of crime and learning from past crimes and trying to learn traits that are relevant to solving crimes, such as tracking and chemistry and other sciences that are relevant. And at the same time, Sherlock Holmes neglects other parts of his education. At one point during one of the stories, Dr. Watson is talking about the planets, and Sherlock Holmes can't even name all the planets. Now, even in the late 1800s, when where most of these books were written, still they knew all of the planets. And Sherlock Holmes didn't know any of them. And his rationale for all of that was he doesn't have space in his head to learn facts that aren't relevant to solving crime. So I guess the moral of that is if you want to be a genius, you need to forget a lot of stuff. Something I found really interesting about Dr. Watson is that he is literally Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's alter ego. They both served in the military for Britain. Both of them are doctors, and both of them love mystery and have this fascination with mystery. Arthur Conan Doyle must have had a really good life, because if I had an alter ego, I think I would have picked something a little bit different. I'm an accountant from America. I don't think I would have chosen that as my alter ego. I'd pick something cool like a superhero or a firefighter or a professional athlete. I don't think I'd go with accountant. Through all of Sherlock Holmes's and Dr. Watson's adventures, there were a couple that really stuck out to me. For example, the Red-Headed League, which was all about this store owner who comes to Sherlock and describes how he's getting paid a lot of money from this Red-Headed League to copy the encyclopedia. And then he shows up because one day the Red-Headed League is gone. And it turns out that the Red-Headed League was this front for the clerk of the store owner who was digging through the tunnels beneath his store to rob a bank. Crazy. Or in the story of the engineer's thumb, where this engineer loses a thumb and Sherlock Holmes uncovers a counterfeit ring. I loved reading the complete works of Sherlock Holmes. It was interesting, it was fun, it was funny at parts, it made me think, but it didn't make me think that I was thinking, so I was actually thinking and I was learning, but I didn't know it. The book tricked me into thinking, and I love that because it's like I'm thinking and I'm working without actually doing anything. Another thing I loved about the book, which was read by Simon Vance, by the way, a very good reader, in my opinion, I kept saying things like, "What a most singular event," and "I must bid you farewell." I don't know, I don't say stuff like that, but for some reason, listening to a British accent for a long time made me say a bunch of fancy stuff. The main thing that I took away from this book was a deep love and an appreciation and an admiration for Sherlock Holmes and Dr. Watson. And I know these are fictional characters. I know they are made up. And I think that's the genius of Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. He made me care about these people. He made me love them. He brought me into their world. And I think that's what great fiction does. It brings you into a world. But it doesn't just bring you into a world. It's when you leave that world, you bring a little bit of that world with you. And I went into the worlds of Sherlock Holmes and Dr. Watson, and I brought a little bit of that out with me. And I think about them, and I think about different situations, and it's just fun, and I enjoyed it so much. So for anybody who really loves good fiction, good mystery, good crime, or just a good book, I recommend that you read or listen to the complete works of Sherlock Holmes. I loved it, and I know you'll love it too. Thanks, everyone. If you have any comments, please leave them below or reach out to us through email or social media. I'll see you next time on Audiobooks All Day.